today, and if we're going to be tight on time getting all the things done, we may have some things to talk about in a follow-up discussion. But the Heritage Park and where we stand, where we're going, I'm going to do a real brief presentation on the where we stand with regard to the retaining wall and that project, and then Sean's going to do the heavy lifting about what we might be able to look at in terms of interim improvements to what we have with the modest resources we have available. So, if you recall, the site has a retaining wall along the Cumberland and 6th area in the corner there at 6th and Cumberland. Already had some damage when we acquired the site that runs along the South Cumberland, or I guess that's North Cumberland, for a ways. But we had, during the heavy rains, what is that, 2 years ago now, we had slope failure that required us to close the sidewalk, and it left us some fairly significant areas that we've got to go in and address. There's a second area further up the road that's even worse. It left a pretty good scar in the hillside. You may recall we've been talking about this for some time, and we've got about 170 foot of wall that needs to be repaired on the north side, 60 feet where there's no wall remaining, and about 160 feet along Cumberland that remains to be replaced. That was the concept we had going in and trying to look at how we can address this. We've got a couple of ideas that we want to kind of let you know we're working through. We're talking about this yellow line area is the area we'll focus on repair for this project. LDA has worked up two options. The first option is all of these are working with the concept that you see along interstate highways with these modular stacking retaining wall components. But we would go in and replace the wall along the yellow line. Option one would have us dig out behind it a couple of feet, build the necessary drainage structure so we can maintain the wall, but build the wall back in place where it is with that minor excavation. The second option has the same basic footprint, but you notice the red dotted line. That provides the second concept of sloping the hill back. You notice in that big failure area, it's a pretty significant elevation from sidewalk to the slope there to the toe of the hill. So this concept would have us laying back the ground at a 3-to-1 slope that would give us a little easier area to maintain. And what we are doing at this point in time is evaluating the relative cost of the two and how we can safely maintain this part of the facility as we go forward. So we're really looking at, do we try and replace it as is, backfill to the wall, or do we cut the slope down and do it that way and have some excess dirt for elsewhere on the site? You will recall that this project was delayed because we were hoping that this would be part of the FEMA grant that we applied for. It was not. We finally got word that it was not allowed. So we're paying for this project as part of your stormwater fund projects for the coming year. It is included within the budget you've adopted. We're looking at how we can go forward with the recommending between the two options, but we think the project is about $200,000 to $300,000 repair project for that side of the facility. However, as it stands now, the sidewalk is closed, it's impassable, it's unsafe in terms of overall road control, the necessary component. So we're moving forward, we're trying to get that done. That project will be coming to you shortly. I don't have a definitive timeline. Larry, do you have any better idea of a schedule when Drummer may have some costs and estimates on recommendations?
Part of the cost, he's looking at that right now, and one thing that we need to look at least on one of the options, is there is some rock involved, so it may be we need to core drill some to see what rock is there, and to see if that can be excavated out or not. So that's really right now, that's the one item that's the hold up, if you will, on the project moving forward. So, that's what we're discussing right now.
Tony, are you saying if we grade it back that far that we're not gonna need the wall, or you still?
No, the wall will still need to be there. It's whether the slope of the ground is at the top of the wall or the bottom of the wall. And that changes the way the wall is constructed.
I'd like to see you do the slope. I think that would open up the park on that end, because you get a visual down below.
Yeah, it would make the visual from the corner much easier looking into the park. I think that's going to be the more expensive option, but we're still looking at it. If you don't do that and you have the wall, we're going to have some sort of safety fence, something there to keep you from falling over. So it'll be a trade-off, and we'll get back to you.
And I know it's early, but the material for the fence,
If you go through interstate changes and you see these hexagonal kind of stacking blocks, that's the material we're talking
so it's
about.
block material.
Yeah, it'll look like a concrete face with some pattern to it when you're done. All right, that's all I had. We'll let Sean go ahead and plug up his machine, and I'll step down, and we'll continue to kind of go through. But overall, as we're making this transition, we're trying to manage this meeting and get out in time for you to have lunch elsewhere, since we couldn't do lunch. But hopefully you can see there's still a lot going on. We've got a lot of challenges operational in terms of what we can do with COVID, what we can do with regard to our budget allocations. But you still got a lot of big things that are on the horizon for making improvements as we move forward. So I'll let Sean get set up, and we'll talk about some options for Heritage Park, and I'll sit down and be quiet for a minute.
Tony, we will get a choice on council to get to decide.
Yeah, we'll bring you the two options and prices, then we'll go to bid.
Okay, my turn to present. All right, so today, as Tony mentioned, we're going to talk about a few options that you guys should consider moving forward that might be a nice next step as an improvement to Heritage Park. I wanted to put these photos back up here. As you guys all know, the colonnade just turned out great. I'm so pleased that you guys decided to keep that and restore that piece, and I think it really sets the park apart. I was looking back through my photos to put this little slide together for you, and I came across the old photos of the old colonnade, and I thought it'd be nice to share those and just refresh everyone's memory of what we had to work with and how far we've come. So, there's a few things I want to talk about today. The very first one is the legacy trees. We understand we need to go ahead and be moving forward with getting those in the ground and picking a place for it. On the screen here, what is the existing master plan, where we had the legacies located in the master plan. If you recall, is where there's currently that concrete pad that still remains out there. At the grand opening, that concrete pad served a great function for your fireworks staging. It worked very well down there. But in the master plan, that was where we were looking to place those legacy trees. So we understand that there's been conversation that, that concrete pad has been working out pretty well. If we did want to move forward with the legacy trees in that location, obviously that pad would have to come out. So there is some expense with that location. We do understand that future subsequent phases, you'll be putting in a new entry off of Cumberland and bringing that road all the way up to make the connection to your existing road. Just a thought process there. If we decide to relocate those legacy trees now, you guys as a city can still utilize that concrete pad, and as you bring that road up in a subsequent phase, you could then make the decision of whether or not you want to keep that area or remove it as a part of that project. So if we were to look at options of where the legacy trees would go instead, we would recommend right as you come into the main entry, you see my hand there, we have a nice open space ready to receive trees right up front as you enter the park. We would recommend that if council agrees to not locate the legacy trees as shown in the master plan, we think this would be a very great location to place those, prominent to as you enter the park currently, and again, it's ready to be planted. So that'd be the first item that I would like the council to think about and give a little feedback if that's something you guys would like to pursue.
Yeah, we really do need to make a decision to go, no go. The season for planting trees is coming up. We need to do that. We told the family they were going where they're indicated, but I think we had enough feedback that you enjoyed the fireworks and the way it worked there, that we put it on pause. But we don't want to go through another planting season and fail to get the trees that have been donated in the ground. So we would like very much to get your feedback today on that if we could.
We had, when we talked about the gate and the electric gate, automatic gate there, we said do not plant a whole lot of trees behind there, correct? Because of the way the gate is going to be.
Right, correct, that's right up by the drive though. These trees would be more out in this open field area.
And we don't see that and we also discussed potentially parking there, but we don't see the need to park there at any time for the event.
I think there's a couple of ways we can approach that. During the grand opening, that was kind of preferred parking area, and also working, busing people in from a parking off-site. So you do still have that functionality if you don't need that overflow or if you don't want that overflow. The trees could be planted in a configuration that you could drive in there and park around them, but that's not ideal. It probably would not be preferred.
I'm not requesting that we require that, I just think we ought to discuss it. Now, down below, we did park down below about a block, didn't we, Tony? There
Yes.
was an entranceway, is that has trees there, or they're not trees there really, though, that's just on the drawing.
Well, they're there, but when you get out on the site, the spacing between the trees is enough where you can park around them.
Down below.
Yes.
Park
Yeah,
below.
down. So you could do something in that manner, that is possible.
But not what you really recommend. How many trees are we talking about?
I understand that there's 21.
And they're going to be big trees.
These are the legacy trees donated by the Judson Hill family. So they each stand for an aunt or an uncle or a member of the family that made a donation. And they're of different varieties. They were picked by the tree board.
And the reason I ask for that is I'm talking about the view of the colonnades. And that view that you get of the colonnades when you come up the street off of Cumberland. Is that something that's going to eventually screen that view?
I think the trees should grow up, that you would see through them as the canopy rises up. I don't think they're, I don't recall the exact species of tree, but it's gonna be how you plant them. And it would actually be kind of nice if you strategically plant them in a way that you get view corridors where the trees start framing those shots as you come up the hill. So I think it would actually enhance it a little bit and kind of frame in the different views. But it's really gonna come down to the specific planting of here's the one tree and the spacing between them.
I guess the fundamental question is, do you want to retain the concrete pad for future fireworks? Or are
Yes.
you willing to give that up?
That was very, very popular with people in the city who actually wasn't even there at the site. That I even had people say that was a better location than the 4th of July at Cherokee Park.
Does anybody else have a tree question on the location?
Sean, I wonder if you might move the pointer to where Cherokee Drive comes with the traffic light. It's on Cumberland, move on a little bit north of Cumberland.
Right
There.
there.
That location, where we're gonna build a main entrance with the masonry entrance and sign and all that. I know that's a high dollar to future plan, but as you can see, there's not much development there. And I wondered if we ought to and there's some big trees right there where it looks like it's gonna have to be moved down. To get that proper entrance and make a proper four-way stop at that, traffic light intersection. Are there some thoughts or plans going into, landscapingly enhancing that entrance for it? I don't know how many years away it is, but I want us to really save up and prepare for that, because I think that's gonna be a big deal for people knowing where the park is, all that. So I'm wondering, are there enhancements that we're could make with tree planting or landscaping, because it's an area that hadn't had much attention?
I would say, to answer your question, yes, you will be wanting to landscape and beautify that entry. But until you guys design and actually construct, I would caution doing very much down there, because there's a lot that we have to understand of how that entry actually, where it truly is placed, how that road's gonna function coming up. So you don't want to undo something down there that you do now.
All right, I understand.
The construction traffic would kill whatever you plan.
I think the area you're talking about originally, moving that up there, right there. If they were spaced apart, eventually you could still use it as parking. It may not be it could be the third choice for parking if you have major parking up there. You could still park down where that we were talking about, that other entrance, but you would still have plenty there. I think that would be the most logical place for it to be.
I would agree. I think that's your best option, and if you're retaining the fireworks location, which we all saw functioned very well.
Is council comfortable with saying we want to retain the fireworks area and ask the tree board to look at location of the trees in that general area?
Yes.
Yes.
One check.
So the next topic I want to discuss, looking at some options, as Tony mentioned, for your next step to continue enhancing the park. We're going to propose a couple different options, some ideas that we want you to start thinking about. These are smaller little things that you could probably accomplish now. Depending on your budget, I'm not sure that you can get all of them. But these are some small ones that you guys can do this year or next year to keep progress going. So the first recommendation we would have is entry wayfinding. In understanding that this star here is where your future main entrance goes, you could at this time do some secondary entry, not as big, but something that basically directs people off of North Cumberland up to the current park entry. Very easy to do, very simple, not a big monument sign, but still something that is nice and within the character of the park. It would be permanent. So that's something you guys could take off, bite off in a small piece. We would recommend right at the corner to bring people up 6th and at your current entry point. We did look in the past at, and I've got some slides here that shows what we looked at that entry with the gates and everything up here. So depending on what you want to do moving forward, we may choose to only do one or both. But wayfinding, I think, is a nice next project that is very accomplishable.
We talked about that, when we were there at the ribbon cutting Grady Kyle, which is right across the street, sort of diagonal.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Yeah, that's it. You can also, right, you want to be careful at your future entry, just the same thing for landscaping. You don't want to undo anything later on. Here's just a few options that I think we could start to explore as the city brings in your new colors and logos and rebrand. Obviously, you want to consider if that is incorporated into your wayfinding, or do you want to keep this park as its own kind of character. So these are all items that would be incorporated as you would design a wayfinding package. So wayfinding can be at two different levels. You can have your larger signage for vehicular, and then you have your secondary level for more at the pedestrian scale. So I looked through the master plan and identified several little areas that would be good for the pedestrian level wayfinding. You do have your historical sign up by the upper parking lot right now. That's in this location. But you have opportunities throughout the whole park for not only directional, but informational. And we did discuss back during the design of the colonnade, you still have informational opportunities there for plaques or dedication type signage. So that package would be designed in conjunction with your vehicular, and it would all be within the same family. But how many, how little, that's all something that would need to be studied, and I understand that the park is getting heavily used. So there's probably a lot of people already out there that know where a good location would be. So the city could move forward with, making that happen.
What do you mean? There are a lot of people there that would know, like citizens?
Citizens that are just using the park daily, going up there walking, is that kind of understanding of the park that we would seek? I'm not there every day, and,
He's talking about Deborah.
So a user that goes up there all the time, walking the park would say, you know what, here's a really great view, a really great spot that an informational sign would really function very well. Someone that has a history with the park now that has been open for and gotten heavy use, we would come in and do our interpretive wayfinding recommendation, but we would want also that feedback to say, you know what, I walk in the park every day, and actually if you move this sign to this other location, it would function a lot better.
We talked about this, and I would like to suggest that originally that we were going to put something where each one of the buildings was previously
A marker,
located. Is
correct.
That also part of what you're talking about?
That's a separate, we look at that as a kind of a separate project. That's more of a historical, monumental informational package. That's going to require working with, was it the UT Historic Commission that has all the artifacts?
And I would work with local community leaders and individuals attached to Marston College.
Correct, yeah. And so that's more of kind of a historical endeavor.
So when you're talking about information, I assume that information would be what building was here.
Yes, it could be. So there, again, it's how far you want to take it. And you can do informational with views, as you know, a nice view looking out over town. You see a church in the background. Well, you've seen the informational signage that has a picture of that view identifying what you're looking at out across the landscape.
And I like that, but I tell you what, I think that we need to really think about this, because I believe that the historical signage, if we did views and did do historical signage of what buildings were there first, I think we would have a problem.
But I think we
But-
gotta keep in mind, and we've discussed this before, is we're not recreating buildings that used to be there and almost littering the park with informational signs all over the place, which was the purpose of that historical sign that we got. And I want us to be cautious about continuing with that, the commemoration of Morristown College. I met with a group, and I promised them I'd bring it up at this session, which I am, which want us to change the name of the park. I told them I thought we had already been through that, the council has a position of public acceptance. I told them I'd bring it up again. But we have done large number, almost 1.4 million, and nothing but commemorations, and we have to answer to the other parts of the community that want to use the park to be remembered as well, that haven't been addressed at all yet. So I would caution this is, if we're gonna do wayfinding, that's fine. But if we're gonna start putting markers all over the park, here's what used to be here, well, it's not there now. And it's for the future, and it's for the whole community. And I want us to keep that concept in mind. And I addressed the group that kind of lobbied with me and invited them to lobby with each board member, or council member, to get their input. I just want to set it. And I'm really just fulfilling an obligation to bring it up at this setting. But that was my response to them, and we may have other responses as well. But I hope we keep in mind that what we've done so far has been plenty, a lot, and that we have other groups, historical groups, that we have to answer to in the community.
Gary, I'm talking about under 10, if you talk about the buildings, and if you're gonna put a sign there anyway, and this is a longer discussion than today, I do believe on the signage, but if you're gonna put a sign up there, I think you can take one sign, and you can say to your right would be the building and so forth. I think that is, I'm coming from this from a historical standpoint, and not to necessarily what you might think would be tip the scales toward one side or the other. But I think you can talk about the view. We have Stapleton Long did the picture that we all know called the steeples in Morristown. And so you would look from here and you would see to here, you see like we do from the park, the Martin Luther King Park. You can see all what you're out there. I really do think we need to think hard about incorporating that. If you're going to put a sign up, get your money's worth.
Well, and that's what I want to stress on. What I'm talking about is small bite-sized chunks for this next phase. And I think that historical interpretive signage with markers and everything, that's a larger study, and that's an involved project. And what I'm proposing with this interpretive wayfinding is more how you function and find your way through the park, and not necessarily creating a memorial or information of this is where the old gym was, or a marker of that. That is a more involved study.
I think it's very important that we have the wayfinding markers that you're talking about. But rather than, I think there's a step before you find your way through the park, you've got to find the park. And it would be my suggestion that we spend our time and money this year and maybe for next year and go down here at the corner of North Cumberland and what's that, 6th?
Yes.
5th or 6th?
6.
6th. And in that corner, put a nice sign there, a nice sign that will be there forever. Not to take away from the main entrance sign, but put a sign there that says Heritage Park, former site of Morristown College, and then go up to the entrance and put a smaller sign there before we build the gates and things that we have to have there. I would think that we spend our time there rather than spending it in the park right now, because we only have so much money and we don't need to stretch it so far that we want to come back in a few years and replace everything again. Let's spend our time and money at that corner identifying where the park is.
And with the project previous that Tony was speaking of, that would be a good time to be thinking about that sign as you remediate that wall.
As we remediate that wall, exactly.
I would agree with that. They give you more time to talk about this than you could do. The others are maybe five little signs. And what they're doing in a lot of places now, they have the little code with an
Yeah.
iPhone. You can take that and it'll take you into a bigger expanse of things. So, I agree. We need to know where it is first.
Before you know where it is, what's inside it, we got to know where it is. And there's a lot of people, more than Deborah, that are going up there using that park.
Deborah takes Frank though and the dogs. Yeah, we're there every day.
Yeah.
So on the screen now, this is just an example of many different options of signage, and what would be proposed for Heritage Park would be something within the character of Heritage Park. I'm not proposing anything as far as a design at this time. I'm just giving you guys ideas of possible projects for this next step.
I think you were right when you said that Heritage Park signage be Heritage Park signage and not try to tie it in with any other brand. Still, just personally.
I think the sign down there at the corner of Cumberland and Sixth, I think that was primary.
Absolutely.
And where you are right there, I think we need a small idea that this is the entrance.
I completely agree with you. I would recommend
And
at
that,
the entrance.
maybe even something there that we know is gonna be replaced when we put the real gate up there,
Or moved.
or moved.
Right.
Right.
And you know, we would have had that if you hadn't wanted to change the styling.
Well, it's whether you want people and cars going in, or do you want cat?
We've got some up there now.
It moved on.
It did?
The bull moved down the road.
I just brought up some slides. This is what we had previously designed for that entry, just to refresh. We were looking at an entry gate and two column markers on either side. The second idea that we would bring to the table is a dog park. In the master plan, we had a location, you've got where the old tennis courts are up there. It's a nice flat pad, ready to go. In the master plan, we were proposing some sort of functional use, like a bocce ball court. Now, I think a dog park in that light still meets that intent of your master plan. So, here's a couple of examples of a dog park. I understand you, as a city, just completed one, so I think you're very familiar. But I think that might be a good use for that area.
Sean, let me ask you a question. I had someone who, they live just outside Nashville, and I mentioned that we might have a dog park here, and they said, whatever you do, if you can do it, make the surface artificial surface.
Yeah.
It stays cleaner, people are far more inclined to clean up on those than the grass ones we've got. Has that been your experience? Is that something you do?
Absolutely. It all comes down to expense. We completely recommend doing some sort of artificial turf, something that doesn't wear down, not only for the look of the facility, but also it helps with hygiene on the animals.
Yeah.
Becoming muddy and all
Well,
that.
we're thinking, we've got an east side dog park and a west side dog park. If we're wanting something to be unique and another reason to use the one at Heritage Park and get more folks up there, that would be a draw.
Absolutely. And I would recommend, whatever goes in that space, if it is a dog park, it would need to be within the character and at the level that you guys have already put into that park. This is a very, very nice park. And the dog park would need to maintain that and carry that forward.
You're saying that if we put artificial up there, we can actually combine a dog park and a splash pad together?
Yeah.
It's possible. Anything's possible.
It'd be unique.
It would be, and the dogs would love it.
You'd have to hose that down for sanitary purposes, wouldn't you?
Yes, it functions a lot, yes, you would want to clean it, and there's two thought processes behind that. You can put in an irrigation system that automatically waters it down. We get a lot of rain. There's a thought process that it naturally cleans itself, but there's a hygiene factor that we're all aware of. But the maintenance, the question often comes up about the maintenance and operation of that. Who's going to go up there and clean it down, and how often? Well, if you don't do anything, you're going to get worn down, muddy paths where the dogs run, and you're going to be maintaining the area anyways. So it's almost a trade-off. There are lots of benefits to going with an artificial turf system, but it comes down to upfront expense, really.
May I ask, I think Craig is here. Craig, what do you know? Is this a good place for a dog park?
This property is real.
Have you worked with artificial, or you read about that?
I think one of the concerns you've got is your operating budget for improvements in this fiscal year is $50,000. Artificial turf is a wonderful concept, well beyond your means.
It's significant. I don't know exact figures, but it's a lot. Like, I think it's in the 100,000 range or plus.
Yeah, when they did Keystone.
And the reason behind that is it's not just coming in and laying down, you have to prep the site, there's under drainage systems. So
It's like you're putting down a football field.
Exactly.
Except you're using about a tenth of it.
Yeah, but the cost of the dog park itself with artificial turf, I can tell you, I wouldn't know until it is, but I would suspect it'd be outside your $50,000 budget.
Well, if we're talking about $50,000 that we have as a limit, and we're talking about moving the legacy trees somewhere else so we can keep that concrete pad down there, and we fix that concrete pad where it could be used for some other purpose, other than just shooting fireworks off of it, that it could be used as a concrete pad. Putting our sign down on 6th and Cumberland and putting some small sign up at the other thing, we've spent our $50,000.
I'm trying to give you guys some options. I'm not saying you need to do all these things. I'm trying to give you guys a few ideas and a few options.
The fence around the concrete, and temporary dog park.
We need to put a dog bag.
The last recommendation idea that I would propose to you guys to think about is a trail. This may be a route we would propose without going out there and truly studying it and understanding the exact routing, but this is what a 1 mile trail looks like. You can see it winds pretty good through your forest and all the way around. That's measured out to be about a mile. But I say that I don't think you would want to do more than a mile at this time. I think that's a good target.
What's the cost on that?
I understand that the city just did a trail project, and I think the costs, or maybe not, but they usually come in about $4 to $7 a linear foot. But we are seeing as a firm, costs are kind of all over the board right now, sometimes in the favor of a project, and sometimes we just had a bid last week that came in a bit higher than we were expecting. Right now, it's a volatile bid environment.
Could that be used as a cross-country?
It could be. Trail costs vary depending on how wide you want to make it. If you're just going to mulch it, are you going to pave it? All these come into the factor. Right now, I would assume this is just kind of a dirt path. I mean, it's
Craig, Frankie, didn't you all get some cost on trail building as we're looking at doing a arena?
Yes, and it's, it was in the same ballpark, $4 to $6.
So these would be smaller projects for a next phase that I want to give you guys some options to think about. Obviously, the sky's the limit on what you can do out there. You're just restrained by your budget constraints, as we all know. So today, again, I just wanted to come up with a few options for you, things to be thinking about and to discuss over.
So the stormwater would, I mean, the wall would come out of the stormwater.
That's
So-
correct.
So the 50,000 is applied. I think Tommy's on target on how we spend our 50 right now. If you find out how much the trail, we might be able to do part
Well,
of
if
the
the
trail.
trails, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Go ahead.
If the trail is gonna cost around $25,000 to $30,000, figures you're talking about, we might be able to do that sign down there, and clean up the concrete pad and keep that within that 50, couldn't we, Tony?
Yeah, if that's your level of interest, I think we can come back with a game plan on how we can do that. Get some more firm costs but I think you're right, you're gonna have to pick and choose. Clearly signage is one thing we seem to be honing in on, we need to identify the park as what the park is. And then if we can also stretch that into some trails, I think you've made a pretty significant improvement in your overall amenity package.
Trails, and it's depending what it is, Tommy, we've had a lot of requests for the cross-country team to be able to be up there.
Now, generally, those events are 5Ks, so they're 3-mile trails.
I think this was mainly practice.
Well, not only practice, but you could work into, you know, your beginning and your ending of your cross-country. And that would be a great place to have a beginning or a.
Well, we've got a lot of other areas you can run through, you just have to designate a trail, temporary trail for an event.
And the only cost for the trees they're paid for.
That's a maintenance expense, we just need some direction.
But are they paid to have them planted?
The trees themselves have been donated, we'll get them planted within the existing resources.
But you're not gonna take it out of our 50?
Does not come out of your budget.
I just gotta know.
I would suggest we do the signage and the trail. I think those are two very popular discussions right now.
That would open your property up too, because of the trail.
Yeah, and from what I heard today on something like a dog park, you know, there's a want to do it at a very nice level. So this park, we've always talked about being a very long-term project. It's going to evolve, and it's a jewel of the community, so.
And Randy Boyd may have another deal someday to build another.
Yeah, he's focusing on Knoxville this year, but yeah.
Well, I understand why.
Well, I don't, yeah.
Randy's out of the dog business, and so.
All right, folks, if I gather the consensus is that you want us to come back with a game plan looking at signage on the corner and at the entrance, looking at the cost of doing trails and see if we can do that within your budget and move the legacy trees to another location, let the tree board carry that ball. Is that a fair summary of where we are?
And the sign at the corner be a permanent sign.
Okay. We'll work on that. We'll come back with those concepts. Now, clearly, Heritage Park has a lot of additional conversation we need to have. We still need to talk about the operating rules, regulations, how we're going to do things, what kinds of things we want there. But with COVID, our opportunities to do things is limited now. We can defer that a little bit while we're getting some of these other projects taken care of. We'll come back to council. We'll be talking about those things in the foreseeable future. We just want to kind of get some guidance on where to do these small projects, continue to make improvements. You know, we just got the benches in up top. I think that made a big improvement in terms of the amenities and the overall appearance. We'll continue to try and make those small investments to make things a little better and try and get more people there. So anything else you've got with the park?
Yes, the rules. Tony, I've been up there, and I've had people ask me, they're interested, they're having pictures made, weddings. I really think we need to look at those rules and get them in place. We may not be able to schedule a lot of things, but there are some smaller things I think that we can handle. And
Right.
I've had 3 couples ask me because they would like, and that would be a small wedding that we're talking about.
Yeah, I recognize it's a need, and we're just trying to allocate our time and your time to get things done. It's on our list. We'll get it scheduled.
Okay, I picked up a copy of the rules yesterday. Could all council members have a copy of those rules, please?
I think you have, but we'll get them out again.
Well, no, we haven't had the final rules.
Okay, well, they're not final. We've still got a lot of work yet to do. We'll happily put those in your hand.
How will why will these rules change? I mean,
Well, you've not met yet and discussed them, so as we see,
Okay.
every time we get together, that we have
okay,
modifications.
you're talking about we as in council, not you as in staff.
Yeah.
Okay, would you just send them out electronically to everybody?
That
please?
should be able to be done this
Yeah, I can't
afternoon.
hear all you're saying.
I'd like for everybody to get a copy of those rules, the Heritage Park rules that were worked on and turned into Joey. And I picked up a copy of those yesterday. I don't think all
that could potentially, or they just need to know so they can plan for the future when COVID doesn't prevent you. But I mean, if the rules, if we have the rules and it just means that we just need, council needs to look at them, we need to have a work session, offer input, but we need to get those rules on, you know, in the policy book. How do you use Heritage Park? The rules for how you use Heritage Park. How you rent it, what you can do, what you can't do.
And that's for us to set.
Yeah, yes, it is. They're here, Gary.
Yeah, we have presented them once to council. We indicated we need to spend some more time on them. I know there've been, some of you made some suggestions that have been incorporated since that time. We'll come back and look at it. We just need to get it scheduled on the table.
I don't need to belabor the point, but I don't remember them ever being presented to council.
Craig, didn't you present these rules to council early on before we even opened the park?
Okay. Well, now
Don't
we're
we
down.
have a sign up there at the upper lawn?
No, we're talking about, if I'm gonna have a party, I have a caterer, I can serve alcohol, what are my hours?
You're talking about the policy manual.
Yes. Well, they call them rules, it's called Heritage Park rules.
I don't think we have seen those.
It's been a while.
I remember Craig presenting.
Yeah.
It was more about the guidelines and stuff.
All right, folks. Again, we recognize there's much more work to be done. We've got a lot of planning yet to come. We've got many other things on your schedule to talk about in terms of coming workshops. So as I said, first thing this morning, we may talk about the need for some more of these focused, longer form workshops to get some of these things done. We'll continue to compare notes. Having done that, we've kind of hit the highlights of what we wanted to accomplish today. Talking about the community center, talking about Heritage Park and where we're going. Feedback, thoughts, was the investment of time that was worthwhile? Are we on the right track? Do we need to make adjustments?
I appreciate the summary at the end of each presentation so we know what we've agreed to today.
Okay.
Tony, I would like to ask you about the signage, the hospital signage that we were asked to look into.
Yes, at this point in time, we're still looking at it's federal project, so we have to look at the constraints we have on making modifications in a certain period of time. We're also looking at the construction of the sign themselves is a little difficult to manage. It's an etched sign, so making modifications is a little more, it's not just repainting the sign face. So we're looking at how we do it. It's a little more complex than we first thought.
And if next time you could bring us up to date on the Humane Society, I know I had mentioned something, Mayor, and talked about a little bit. I know there's been another meeting.
I think the Humane Society will be a topic for many months to come.
Well, if you could bring us up to where we are today, I mean, you don't have to do that today, you can do it
Yeah,
Tuesday
I
afternoon.
would say that there are many moving parts, none of which seem to have an impact in sight at this time. All right.
I'd like to make a comment about yesterday. I came down North Cumberland, and there were 3 vehicles parked on the sidewalks. In fact, I think there was a 4th vehicle just pulled away as I came over the hill. I hesitate to mention it because I'm afraid somebody will go up there and say Councilman Pettigo is complaining about you parking on the sidewalk, but I think it needs to be notified.
At this point, Larry, Joey, the final closeout, the advertising removal of liens on that project, we're still waiting on some paperwork before it's officially ours to go and do some modifications to the site. Once we get that done, we've got a plan for some bollards to control the access to those things. But right now, my understanding is we're still going through that process of closing out the contract. All right, folks. I appreciate your time. I know that everybody has many other things they could be doing. Hopefully it's been worthwhile. We'll be back in this room in 2 weeks. We'll pick up talking about the economy, and we'll talk about road projects. Thank you very much.
Since we've got